Hello, dear members and friends and contacts of CCME. I'm coming back to you with another video. You will probably have read either on our Facebook page or elsewhere that there is an agreement between the European Parliament and Council on the resettlement framework. That's of course good news. It's one of the safe passages, and it can provide a framework for EU member states to do more and better resettlement. However, member states now have to fill that. They have to offer resettlement places. Unfortunately, the pledges for next year are very disappointing. 16,000 have been pledged. In addition, 13,000 humanitarian admissions. That is not enough. Of course, there's a difficult reception situation in many countries, but we shouldn't forget that there's conflicts in other parts of the world where Europe has a responsibility. And that, of course, opens a bit the question, where are we with asylum and migration legislation in general? Is this a new start or not? You will recall that there had been in 2020 the proposals of the pact, a whole package of proposals, and some proposals in 2016 which hadn't been dealt with between the Parliament and the Council. There's the old conflict. You on the one hand have those who want more solidarity. That means help for the countries at the border of the EU in receiving people, particularly those asking for asylum. There's others who more underline the responsibility, saying these countries should protect the border and should register all those arriving. And it seemed for a long time that there was no way of overcoming that. However, there's been a bit of progress recently. In June, there has been a voluntary solidarity declaration of a number of member states offering up to 10,000 places of solidarity, of taking asylum seekers on. And then in September, there's been an agreement between the European Parliament and Council about a so-called roadmap, agreeing to finalize and agree on and adopt altogether 9 legislative proposals, some of 2020, some of 2016. We have for CCME always very much insisted that new legislation should bring an added value for the protection of the most vulnerable. And here we're having a concern. A lot of the talk and the negotiations is about protecting borders rather than protecting people. And a lot of it seems to be based on the assumption that you need to keep people outside the EU or at the border of the EU to have a functioning asylum system. That, of course, will not work. And particularly as there's now the time frame where both legislators have said we want to agree until spring 2024, we insist that there shouldn't be a rush into compromises which are not sustainable, which are not fair. It is better not to have legislation, to have bad legislation. And let's remember, there are existing laws. They have been adopted between 2004 and 2011, which can be a good basis, with the exception of Dublin, where some change is badly needed. However, these rules need to be implemented, and that has been one of the major obstacles. Member states haven't implemented them. The European Commission has not done a good job in enforcing implementation. So no matter what the legislation is, it needs to be enforced. It needs to be implemented, otherwise it's not worth the effort. The last aspect I wanted to mention is, you will have heard about the so-called instrumentalization discussion. The European Commission has, over the last year, made several proposals there, addressing situation where third countries are using migration to put EU and its member states under pressure. And a lot of it has been along the lines to propose that central parts of the asylum legislation would not apply to the countries which are affected. This is, in our view, neither fair nor logical, because if you want to protect yourself against the blackmail from a third country, why do you react in penalizing people seeking protection? That doesn't make sense and is further making those who are already vulnerable even more vulnerable. We have so far not seen the proposals adopted. There was a postponement of the decision in early December, but we have to be very, very vigilant. All in all, we will have to argue for a refugee protection system in the EU and a legal access system which is working, and not only working according to the logic of deterrence and keeping people out, but making Europe fit for shouldering its responsibility. We've seen with the Ukraine crisis that Europe can be very generous and welcoming and we would like to see that reflected in European asylum and migration legislation. It will take a lot of work to make that happen against the odds, and we very much hope that we can, like the last years, work together with you, members, friends, and contacts of CCME. In that spirit, I wish you a very, very blessed Advent and Christmas time and a good start of 2023. See you next year.